Okay, I finally caught up with this manga. Hopefully I'll get this video done before the anime adaptation comes out. You know what? Screw it. I'm still gonna do this anyway. Undead Unluck, along with Ron Deranged Detective, is currently one of my top favorite mangas to read and enjoyed all the way through. With its likable cast, unique power system, and overall just wicked fun, it's kinda confusing that I haven't seen that many videos or people talking about it. Then it was announced that an anime adaptation was coming soon that gave me the inspiration to catch up with the current story and work on a video talking about it before the anime airs. But as you can see, I'm a little late to the party as of time of this recording. But I really do want to talk about this. As I said, it's currently one of my favorite mangas to read, so let's not waste any more time and get started. The series was created by Yoshifumi Tezuka, and this is his first serialized manga. He's been a fan of Weekly Shonen Jump ever since he was a kid, and by the time he was in high school, brought in some of his artwork to the editor department. It was only by age 24 that he won the 78th Treasure Newcomer Manga Award for his one-shot comic Arc Travel. In 2019, he drew the one-shot Undead plus Unluck, and it was published in the Weekly Shonen Jump 2019 9 issue, and a year later, got fully serialized as Undead Unluck, currently having 19 volumes released, which, according to his IMDb page, attracted a lot of attention from readers with its no-holds-barrel start. And that quote is accurate, as the first chapter starts with its main character named Fuyuko Azumo reading a manga before proceeding to plan to off herself. Great start! People start to gather to try to persuade her not to jump, but she holds them back with a knife, telling them to get back, and claims to have an incurable disease that will kill them if they touch any part of her body. And then this guy is like, okay, I'll take those odds, and proceeds to walk into Fuyuko's knife, grabs her face, and waits to see what happens. Fuyuko tells him that her unluck is coming, and immediately after, the space the guy was standing on breaks apart and gets run over by a high-speeding train. Well, he's dead. Here lies NPC number 4320. Okay, I can't even finish that joke. We all know he's still alive. His decapitated head rolls to Fuyuko and figures out that she and him are alike, as his body starts to regenerate without any clothes on. And Fuyuko does what any person would do in this situation by punching the guy in the dick and running like hell away from the zombie. My bad, he's not a zombie, he's an undead. And has some questions for Fuyuko. But they will have to go somewhere quiet, as having a naked man hanging around the young girl is going to have people call the police for indecent exposure. So he grabs her and uses the momentum from his regenerated torrent legs to leap around to the top of the building. Fuyuko tries to escape, but Undead Guy catches her dangling off the edge and asking about her unluck. After some persuasion, she caves in and tells him that this started 10 years ago when she was 8, and her parents were headed to an overseas business trip. They hugged her, and not even 10 minutes had passed when the plane her parents were on exploded, killing her parents and everyone else inside. She learned that people who touched her, depending on the degree of touch, have either gotten hurt or died, so she started to cover her bare skin to protect herself and others. And the guy must have only heard like 50% of the story, because he started going under her shirt to cop a feel, thinking, if hugging caused a big stroke of unluck, what will happen if he groped her breast? A crate full of bananas, apparently. The guy was disappointed in that outcome as I was, and wants to see if she can do something different. But it seems like Fuyuko got caught in some leftover unluck, as she slips on a banana peel and falls off the building. Caught in between bewilderment and dread, she laments that she never got to experience some of the things girls her age, and she's not ready to die yet. But the undead guy caught her before she can hit the ground, saying that there's no way in hell he's letting her die after finding out that she might be the one to permanently kill him. And if he figures out her abilities, he might be able to make the biggest stroke of unluck to do him in. So, to the dismay of Fuyuko, he carries her and heads off to his hideout to do more research about this. Meanwhile, a black suit organization observing the two are given orders to apprehend the undead, as well as her once they confirm her abilities. At the undead's hideout, he tests Fuyuko's powers by seeing that the length of time he stays in contact with her body changes the size of the rubble that falls. and figures out that the duration of him touching her correlates to the size of her unluck. And to up the stakes, he wants to try clinging to a wide area of her body and asks her to take off her clothes. Fuyuko took the request well by running away. Undead chased her around the building until her jacket got caught onto something, causing both her hat and jacket to fall off, exposing her long hair. After Undead commented on her hair, Fuyuko breaks down in tears, saying that no one can cut her hair for her, as every stylist that had tried had died. So the Undead guy decides to do it for her, mostly because he wants to see what type of unluck will happen to him, and reminds Fuyuko that as long as he's touching her, no unluck will come his way yet. And he did a pretty good job. She looks so cute. Undead guy anticipationally waits for the 15-minute stroke of unluck, thinking it has to be huge, something that might blow the whole building away. But all he got was his head getting sliced off and put into a capsule. The black suit group arrives and thanks Fuyuko for letting Undead's guard down before proceeding to cuff her. The leader of the group explains their job is to police any unselected negators and umas, more on that later, that poses a threat to society and believes that Undead will use Fuyuko's abilities for murder. But Fuyuko doesn't believe him and said that even though she only met him that day and was somewhat handsy, he was only using her unluck so he could die. The leader grabs Fuyuko by the face and advises her to be quiet as he doesn't mind getting rid of her right here and now, but Fuyuko warns him that the undead guy touched her and no string of unluck has come from yet. Suddenly, a random lightning strike hit the guy holding Undead's head, causing him to die and drop it. The leader thinks that's not Fuyuko's ability and that was just pure unluck, but no, that was Fuyuko, as ironically, her unluck became the lucky chance for Undead to free himself from the capsule. The group then take battle stances as they believe the undead guy has little to no combat, only to be proven wrong as Undead said he has hundreds of years worth of combat experience bottled up in his head thanks to this little card here. And if he ever removes the card after a certain period of time, he'll go off the rails and decomposes all the grunts, commenting on Fuyuko's unluck being time lag. Knowing that he's outmatched, the leader holds Fuyuko with a katana up at her neck and negotiates Undead to hand over his head without regenerating in exchange for her life. Undead easily agrees, only disappointed that he won't fight the leader. Fuyuko is shocked and tells Undead that she's tired of people getting hurt around her and wants Undead to forget about her. But like last time, he ignores her, saying that it doesn't matter why he's doing this. All he knows is that he likes her, he had fun, and even though he'll be captured, he'll find a way out, and hopefully when he sees her again, they'll kick it in style. This gives Fuyuko a thought. If he's willing to risk it for me, why can't I? And so she figures out a way to trigger the biggest stroke of unluck by kissing Undead on the cheek. Realizing what Fuyuko just did, Undead quickly regenerates, holding the leader back while telling Fuyuko to run for it. And well, earlier he was asking for something to blow the building away. Well, wish granted. He came out of the wreckage looking somewhat pretty beat up, and telling Fuyuko that was some pretty nice unluck. She formally introduces herself and asks for Undead's name. Seeing that he doesn't have one, she decides to call him Andy because he's dead, with him not caring much for it. Then he says something that I think a lot of us were thinking in that moment.
Still, a kiss did all this, huh?
Uh-huh.
Guess next we'll try
Yeah, that was an appropriate reaction. So the chapter ends with another chase while the barely alive leader relays a message for all hunters to capture Undead and Unluck. And that's the first chapter, and it's definitely a start. The mangaka knew it wasn't going to be for everyone as he posted in a Bits blog, quote, "A crazy undead and an unlucky manga. It's a little vulgar, but I love for you to enjoy it." Well, I definitely enjoyed it.
I'm interested to see Andy's and Fuyuko's quest to find the greatest death ever, and as I went through this manga, whatever I thought was gonna happen was completely shattered, but I'll get to that later on. Of course, there will be spoilers, as for this review series, each video I'll be going over a few arcs pre-time skip, and then after that I'll go over every arc post-time skip. You'll see what I mean later, but for now, let's continue on, starting with... If there's one way I would describe Tezuka's art style, it would be the 2000s, or rather the early 2000s. I don't know how to describe it. Maybe it's because some of the character and facial designs, especially the shape of the eyes, remind me some of the anime that I used to watch during high school, like Fairy Tail and Hunter x Hunter, which is his favorite anime, by the way. It's also maybe because the designs are semi-realistic but more rounder shapes, along with the simplicity of each design that appeals to me, as I do something similar with my own character designs. But it's not a bad thing, as I can tell each character's personality from the design alone, like with Fuyuko's cute bob haircut, her ironic beanie, and being covered from head to toe with the exception of her face. And Andy, while not having any clothes on 95% of the time, still oozes confidence while being mysterious. Additionally, the enemy designs are also pretty cool too, as each of them has various characteristics and look pretty cool to boot. That's all I got to say for discussing the art style, so on to the next segment. Let's start with Fuyuko. She's the typical protagonist who's sweet and kind to everyone that she meets, and has the determination and courage for when the going gets tough. Probably one of the more interesting aspects to her character is her backstory. Because she easily cursed people with Unluck through physical contact, it's implied that she sheltered herself after the incident with her parents, and hasn't been able to touch grass since she was a kid, giving her character a sense of tragedy. So it makes sense that she questions what's the point of being alive, as any connection that she tries to make will end up in death, making Andy's appearance in her life all the more impactful. And the several moments where she experienced something new for the first time, however crazy it might be sometimes, we can see the joy and excitement on her face, growing more confident in both herself and her ability. And while in the beginning she stood in as a stand-in for the audience as she learns more about the world that she lives in, she slowly starts to become her own character with agency, as her main goal is to become a normal girl to live her life as best as she can. Next we have Andy. This lovable Chad is reckless, blunt, and quick-witted in fights, as he teams up with Fuyuko in figuring out her unluck ability, and is willing to go great lengths to protect her. And despite being a somewhat immortal being, he's not a pessimistic, dreary character that is bored with life. And that's one of the things that I like about him. His bond with Fuyuko is one of the more entertaining and surprisingly wholesome dynamics in the manga despite the first meeting. Plus, of course, he has that mysterious card lodged in his brain with the mystery of what would happen if he goes off the rails, which does get answered in like 2 arcs, and that's a whole can of worms that I'll get into later. And there are more characters that are introduced in the story, and I'll go over them as I go along. But for now, it's time to talk about the arcs, starting with...
This one is going to be short, as it's the beginning of the story and introduces Andy and Fuyuko, and the 2 chapters following after is about the fight between the 2 agents from the organization that hunted Andy in the first chapter. The organization is called the Union, and they have agents similar to Andy and Fuyuko, people who negate the rules of the world with abilities having an unnaming scheme. They're called negators, and the agents that are introduced in this arc are Shen and Unavoidable. Yeah, we don't know their name yet. Shen is like a Chinese Goku, but a little unhinged, where he wants to find strong people to fight with and often looks at the lighter side of things, even when facing a semi-truck being thrown his direction. He's actually the one who informs Fuyuko that the only reason why him and Unavoidable are not hunted is because they are protected by the Union, which gives Fuyuko the idea to join them in order to avoid being captured. Unfortunately, the members are only seated by 10 people and those spots are already filled. Well, not anymore, as during the battle, Andy kills Unavoidable, leaving an empty space for Andy and Ryuko to join. Andy decides to kill two birds with one stone by gunning for Shen, but Shen easily dodges his attack as he explains his abilities are mental related, so there's no chance of killing him. Knowing he's lost, Andy offers himself up again in order for Ryuko to take the empty spot, but Ryuko starts to argue with him, saying that's not a big decision to make on his own, to the point of taking off her clothes. Wait, hold on, there's a reason for this. Even though Ryuko doesn't know if she fell for Andy yet, as that's the plan Andy came up with in order to die, she feels that she can't abandon him as he's willing to fight and get captured again for her sake. So at least she wants to try getting it on with him in order to pay him back. Noticing the weird but interesting relationship the two have, Shen figures it would be more trouble if the two split apart and offers some information about another person they could kill in order for another spot to be filled. Thank God, because I think if he didn't speak up, this will be a whole different story. But if they succeed in their assassination, he'll put in a good word for them and wishes them good luck. And so the two head off to Russia to hunt down the Union member. But not before we get this interesting scene, as it highlights one of the attributes I love about Andy, as despite him being bored with Ryuko and wants to see if banging her would kill him, he wants Ryuko to do it out of her own decision, not because she's desperate, and make her promise to never pull that stunt again. This is where we start to learn more about the power system in this world, as this arc gives Andy and Ryuko a challenge against an opponent who was the one who captured Andy last time. Speaking of, there's a video made by Jesse Golo, I hope I did that name right, who made a video about the power system of the series and the antagonistic's ability in this arc that I recommend watching, as they go into detail as to what the power system is better than I could. But to put it in short terms, every negator can use their ability based on their interpretation of the negated rule, and can even evolve it further depending on their changed perspective. But just because you say have an undead ability doesn't mean you're invincible, as even a smart opponent or not fully understanding your own abilities can get you killed or severely damaged. Hey, Editor Max here. I realized while editing this video that I've been mispronouncing Fuko's name wrong. Her name is actually spelled similar to Persona 3's Fuka, and so I'm going to be using that as a base. Also, I watched the first anime of Undead Unluck, and they said Fuko too, so that's my bad. So from now on, I'll be saying Fuko instead of Fyuko. I just wanted to clear that up just in case anyone got confused. Alright, well, back to the show. Like in the previous arc, where Andy killed Unavoidable because he figured out although Unavoidable negates Andy's ability to avoid, he couldn't stop Andy's regenerated parts because it's not bound by muscle movement, and was already put into action. It's like Andy said in this arc, it's all about how you use it, which is my favorite way of doing battles, as it requires the writers to come up with creative strategies on how to defeat an opponent. And remember when I said that one of Tezuka's favorite anime is Hunter x Hunter? I think that's where some of his inspiration comes into play, because just like in Hunter x Hunter where are different types of Nen users, there are also two different types of negators and two ways to activate their ability. For example, Andy is a self-targeting negator who can only use the power on themselves, and Fuko is an external targeting negator whose powers can affect anyone and anything other than themselves. And both are compulsory activation types, means that once their ability activates, they can't stop it. But for someone like this arc's antagonist Gina, she can act out hers voluntarily. Gina is a pretty interesting character, as even though her negator ability is Unchange, she hates the act of change in the world and wants things to stay the same, to the point of using thick layers of makeup to keep her appearance of a teenager. Fuko meets her unintentionally after being encouraged by Andy, who left to go find some of his old drinking buddies, which, spoiler alert, they're dead. She finds Gina painting by the beach, and after getting acquainted with one another, asks Fuko if she likes stuff that changes or stays the same. And at first, she couldn't give her a straightforward answer as she needed time to think about it. But after spending some time painting, Fuko replies that for the longest time she couldn't change, but thanks to someone like Andy, he helped her change, and so started to appreciate change as a whole. Gina tells Fuko that she's still young, but still resonates with her words as she's very aware that Fuko and Andy have come for her head, and wants to see if they can change her. And the fight with her is okay. I was more entertained by the few ways Andy was trying to figure out Gina's abilities, and the discussion he had with Gina about how change and the only way through death can you achieve the greatest change. Rather than the lovesick crush she has for Andy and jealousy of Fuko for having bigger breasts and Andy's attention. But Andy managed to figure out her abilities are negating variation in form and relying on changing non-living things such as the air, water, and ground. It's one of the more cooler abilities from the manga as Gina can create platforms, barriers, become Lucy from Elfen Lied, and make a flight of stairs. Doesn't take too long for a weakness to be spotted as Fuko mentions to Andy that Gina is speed walking towards them despite having an invisible barrier. Andy figures that there's a hole in the barrier located beneath her feet, and that's how she's able to walk around. Otherwise, she'll be like the Earth Queen from the Legend of Korra. So the plan is to launch Andy's decapitated head into the hole as that's the only thing small enough to fit in there, and all the unluck Andy has been building up will be released, hitting him and Gina all together. And I feel like I'm forgetting something that I forgot to mention.
Is that a UAP?
I see. So that's what was hiding up there.
Oh yeah, that. Okay, so I didn't know how to segue this information earlier without feel like I'm overbloating it, but there's a reason why Gina is here in Russia and it's not for vacation. She was sent by the Union to investigate an UMA or unidentified mysterious animal near the lake, and was using a UFO to search for it, evident by the same symbol printed on the ship. And that UFO is the key to do Gina in, as after using Andy's blood as a makeshift cover, Fuko uses Andy's katana to slice his head off and uses his body as a seesaw to carry out the plan. Once he made sure that Gina won't immediately kick him out, the big unluck kicks in as the Union starts to charge up a light beam despite the Union tech support trying to shut it down. And then the ship's light beam hit Andy and Gina, obliterating everything in its path. Yeah, Gina barriers can't save her this time as light passes through her air barriers like when Andy released that flash grenade earlier. After the battle, Gina lies on the ground and Andy quickly finds a way to prevent her ability activating from bleeding out. While slowly dying, Gina laments that despite not liking change, she did secretly want to change. But after being in the Union for so long, finishing mission after mission, she felt that the world and herself never changed after all this time. But after seeing Fuko's painting, she starts to believe that maybe change isn't a bad thing. Her anti-aging makeup starts to wear off, and she does get her wish granted when Andy kisses her, not caring how old she looks. Gina dies peacefully after, and in the aftermath, Fuko asks Andy for a favor of helping her change the organization, so no one has to suffer like Gina did. Speaking of, not a moment too soon that the ceiling starts to crack open and a shadow from the Persona series grabs the duo and pulls them through to meet the remaining members of the Union, with the leader saying, "Welcome to the Union." Okay, so I don't know how other people feel about this arc. You're welcome to comment down below how you feel about it, but to me, this is one of my favorite story arcs. For one, it's about Fuko and Andy taking on a quest to stop a zombie apocalypse from happening in the States, with Shen tagging along, so there's some potential comedy. Another is learning more about Umas and how their abilities work, and we get to see how the Union operates with them taking quests from this book thing called Apocalypse, who acts like an aggressive NPC, giving them difficulties of each quest, as well as rewards and penalties if the quests are either accepted or rejected. But Fuko, still high off the battle with Gina, asks why can't they just ignore it? It's just a book with razor teeth. What harm can it do? We'll get that answer to that question later on, but for now, the leader explains that the cost of these penalties or added rules to the universe are too great to ignore, but encourages Fuko that if she thinks she can do better, she will have to achieve a great number of points or results in order to surpass her. Hence the reason why Andy and her are going on a quest. Shen is just there to fill the 3-person requirement, and the duo aren't exactly on friendlier terms with the rest of the members right now, considering that he just axed 2 of their members, and Andy didn't help things by shooting blood bullets at them the moment they arrive at the Union. So they prepare to get suited into super spy uniforms and head out. There we meet 2 more characters, Mew and Close. Mew is a special case as she's not allowed to participate in quests, nor is the Negator, but rather Shen's subordinate. It's obvious the two have history together from the way Mew refers to Shen as Master. And as of right now, the relationship seems very master-student-like. As for Close, he's an Uma who escaped from captivity, latching onto anyone and transforming their clothes into the one they desire the most at the cost of the person's body. And if that person loses the capacity to move, he'll seek out a new host that is closest to him. This is how Fuko unintentionally tricks Close to fuse with Andy when, after Close possesses Mew, Fuko uses her unluck to knock Mew out, leaving her vulnerable to be possessed. But Andy quickly jumps in the way. And the way Andy manages to tame Close is by thinking of absurd requests for Close to do to the point of him almost rage quitting, but stays on Andy just to prove he can create a great outfit for Andy. So in other words, Andy bubble basses his way to taming Close, or Cloffy for short. I like Cloffy. He's pretty cool and also plays a vital role in a future arc, so that's something to look forward to. But the gang is finally set in heading out to the state of Nineveh to capture the Uma spoil. During this trip, Fuko and Shen have a small chat about the quest. Even though Andy and Shen will do the heavy lifting, Fuko still wants to help and is interested in the reward as it could help Andy die. Kinda like a plan B in case plan A doesn't work out. And as for Shen, even though he was dragged along in this quest, he's hoping to see if he has a chance to meet and fight him should things get difficult. The other half of Andy that's purposely locked away, Victor the Conqueror. They arrive at the barricaded city, and there's 2 options you can go about this. You can either proceed with caution and plan out how you're going to get past the barricade into the city, or you can do what Andy did and fire a bazooka at the wall, ram into a horde of zombies with the truck they're driving in, and once inside the city, act the zombies as if any of them seen the Uma while slicing some of them up. You can imagine they took the latter option. Fortunately, there is a zombie that has some semblance of a brain left, so they're going to have to lead the group to spoil. But before they go any further, Shen stops Andy, telling him there's a reason why he wanted to proceed with this quest with caution. While negators negate the rules of the world, Umas are the very manifestations of the rules themselves, and most likely activated its ability the second anyone is within its range. No exceptions. And he's proven right, as Cloffy noticed that there's something written on Andy's stomach. And that something is a timer that will turn Andy into a zombie once it hits 0. But the funny thing is, once the timer reached 0 for Andy, his regenerated powers healed him faster than the decay could kill him. So for now, he's okay. And thanks to him slowly being decayed, he's able to understand the zombie woman who told him that she'll tell him where spoil is if they get married. Weird request, but hey, it was always her dream, and she's already 1 foot in the grave, so gotta live while you still can. And I really like this character interaction between Andy and Fuko, as Andy asks Fuko's permission to see if she's okay with this, as Andy can turn down the woman if Fuko considers it cheating, but Fuko easily says that it's fine and to take the woman down the aisle. Like, Andy could easily gone off to marry her, with Fuko acting like it doesn't bother her when in fact it does. And poor Shen, he's trying so hard to keep the group together, but they easily got split apart with Andy doing a marriage side quest, and Fuko slipping away to investigate a hatch that she saw a child peeking out of. At the church, the woman thanks Andy for doing this for her, and wearing a wedding dress and being walked down the aisle was enough for her, so technically they don't have to get married. She now just wants him to save the town by killing Spoil, as it would finally put the decaying people to rest. So she points to the angel statue in front of them, and Andy cuts it, easily understanding what she's trying to say. And we get our first look at the Uma Spoil, who wastes no time trying to get rid of Andy by destroying the church on top of him. But some of the zombies, including the bride, who haven't been completely spoiled, protected Andy. Egg gives Andy the idea to round up any remaining zombies like the bride to help him take down Spoil. Meanwhile, Fuko discovers a group of kids that are surviving underground and that are not zombified. But Shen, who finally caught up with Fuko, explains that just because they're underground doesn't mean Spoil's ability range won't affect them, as he's proven right again when the leader of the kid holds them up at gunpoint, thinking they're working with Spoil, with his shirt exposing his number, as well as the other kids. However, the difference between Andy's number and the kids is that the kids' number is way higher. It could be because they're kids, but there's another reason why. After recklessly running into gunfire range, Fuko calms the kid named Ken down and asks him what happened to the town. Ken explains that Spoil came out of nowhere as a tiny ball a week ago and started to infect the adults. Their teacher realized what was going on and brought the kids underground, thinking of their survival. As for her, she assures them that she's not planning on dying anytime soon and offers them some advice on focusing on their dreams when the going gets tough. And as long as you have a dream, there's no way they can ever spoil. While this does sound cheesy on paper, it's actually brilliant on Tezuka's part as it relates to the concept of spoil. Think about it. Spoil is about things decaying or rotting away, and when it comes to dreaming, you can either use it as a motivation to keep going in life, or let it go and just exist. Wandering through life, waiting to die, but it's not quite there yet, and at the same time not quite living, becoming, well, a zombie. I was honestly impressed by the level of thought put into this arc while I was rereading this, and I figured some of the author's thought process on the concept of spoiling, and one of the ways to combat it, cheesy as it is. So yeah, that's how the kids managed to be unzombified this entire time, and we get an example of this when one of the younger kids starts to lose hope, with Ken reminding her of her dreams in order to bring her number back up. Fuko and the others felt tremors from the top side and opened the hatch to see Andy and the horde of zombies fighting Spoil. When Andy spots them, he drops off the bride to them and continues the fight. And it turns out the bride is the kid's teacher, with the kids being glad that she's okay despite looking like a corpse. Andy comes up with a new strategy after one of the zombies bumps into Fuko, causing some of her unluck to hit it. And that's to have all the gathered zombies touch Fuko and turn them into bipedal bombs. The teacher, being an absolute legend, goes first as she hugs Fuko and goes out in a literal bang. The plan seems to work for a while, but Spoil starts to change the game by inhaling all of the remaining zombies and transforming into its second phase. This second phase comes with a night crown, wings, and a beam that will disintegrate anything that touches it. Andy realizes that he has to wrap up this fight real quick because not only does that beam poses a threat for Fuko, but both she and Shen have timer on their bellies. So he goes to charge in, but quickly realizes that in its second phase, it has something that will decompose living things if they get too close to it. Spoil starts to talk about before he was born, there was no decay in the world, but now people don't take life for granted and do their best to live even one more day, being annoyed with Apocalypse for meddling in his plans. He asks Fuko why she's so attached to her body, with Fuko answering it's because she has a dream. A dream that she plans on carrying out, and as she shared this, her numbers start to go up, similar to the kids. Shen also shares this dream of becoming the greatest fighter in order to avoid being spoiled, as he brings down a long-ass staff on Spoil's head. He realized even though Spoil's head got close to Fuko, she didn't spoil, and figured out that its body generates the spoil with its head being a weak point. So Shen tags into the fight using an artifact called Nikoi Kinko Staff, which is basically the power pole from Dragon Ball where it can extend and shrink. Told you he's like a Chinese Goku. During this fight, we get the name and description of Shen's ability as it will only activate when Shen is fond of his target, and once that's done, any conscious thought that enters the target's mind will be forced to do the opposite of any action they were trying to make, and this ability is called Untruth. Seeing the overwhelming strength of Spoil, Shen is excited that he may meet Victor today, and in order to finish the quest, they need to take out the core Spoil. But first, they need to stop his Spoil ability. Andy starts to think, explain that the decomposition happens due to bacteria and the moisture in the air, and Fuko suggests space is a good idea because there's no moisture there. Shen plans to launch both Andy and Spoil into space, but warns Andy that he's gonna have to endure Spoil's ability until he reaches destination, so he suggests Andy to remove his card, and Andy agrees on 2 conditions. 1. Protect Fuko from him, and 2. When Shen fights him to make sure he defeats him. Once they manage to locate Spoil again, Shen tosses Neo Kinko to Andy, who extends it, hitting Spoil and starts to extend to the sky, pulling his card out and throwing it to Shen. In space, Spoil tries to disintegrate Andy, but he regenerates instantly as his hair starts to grow and become darker. And this is where we get our introduction to Victor, and I can see why Shen wants to fight him so badly, as he easily takes apart Spoil and captures the core. As he lands back on Earth, Shen tells Mew to beam away Spoil and realizes that Victor isn't just Andy past form with some memories locked away, but rather Victor can be considered to be a whole different person. A person that is very dangerous right now, as he realizes that Andy wants to come back and Fuko is the key. So he tries to kill her, but Shen stops him and gets the fight he's been waiting for. But unfortunately, he gets his butt handed to him as his ability doesn't work on him, and remarks that for a supposed human, his strength is unreal. Even Fuko's unluck doesn't work on him, and begs Andy to come back to her from wherever he is inside his mind. Despite Shen losing the fight and having both of his arms messed up, he admits defeat and is happy for the learning experience to get stronger. But he still needs to uphold at least one of his promises to Andy, so he jumps back into the fight protecting Fuko and stalling as long as possible before his distress call finally reaches the remaining members of the Union to come help him. And here we have the rest of the members of the Union. Hold on, let me clear my throat for a second. We have Atomic Bomb, Brazilian Dash, Bill Nye the Crack Guy, Samurai Samus, Android Astro Boy, Billy the Kid, and Silver Captain Falcon. The fight starts to get interesting as we see most of the team members' abilities, from Titania and Billy's teamwork, to Nico using his knowledge from the experimentations on Andy 10 years ago, to Junas using a flaming sword, who seems to have some history with Victor if this line is something to go by, as well as him having knowledge about the Union and its member count. Top manages to pull Fuko and Shen away from the fight to safety, but Fuko wants to go back and help because really, what can the rest of the Union do to stop Victor? The only one who managed to stop him last time was Gina, and she's dead. While there is Nico's knowledge, it's proven that those methods will only work with Andy, as Victor is something else entirely. I mean, the dude can cut up his limbs and create copies of himself like a starfish. So the plan is to find a way to bring some semblance of Andy back, and once she does, she can impart some of her luck with him in order to take down Victor and put the card back in his head. So she Okay, I'm going to try to say this as best as possible without laughing from absurdity. So Top takes her back to the fight, and she finds the real Victor among the fighting opponents and jumps onto Victor, smothering with her boots. Once Junas understands what Fuko is trying to do, she orders the Union to defeat the copies and protect Fuko. Fuko tries to figure out a way to bring Andy back, but realizes that in the month of meeting and journeying with him, she still doesn't know anything about him. He's about as much as a mystery as Victor, who we learned that he might be the original person, but it doesn't matter to Fuko because Andy was the one who helped her and now she's going to help him by using the gun that she took from Ken and shoot Victor in the place where the scar is. She puts her finger in the hole, preventing him from regenerating the injury, and calls for Andy, and on Victor's left side turns into Andy, who doesn't waste any time helping Fuko by bringing in more luck by kissing her on the lips. Feeling embarrassed, she runs away, warning everyone about the big stroke of unluck coming, so everyone retreats. Victor tries to prevent them from escaping, but Shen managed to hold him from afar. Even though he's about to get nuked by multiple meteorites, Victor comments that it's been a while since a person managed to beat him, as he takes the stroke of unluck with a grin on his face. The meteorites decimated the city, and for those who are wondering if those kids from earlier are okay, they are. They're actually going to be placed in an orphanage run by the Union, and when they become of age, they can either join the Union and become a subordinate or receive employment as a general member of society at the cost of their memories about the Union and unidentified phenomenon. Fuko comes to the wreckage and finds Victor's body to stick Andy's card back, but it's too bad she didn't take into account the ocean water filtering into the crater and is swept away. She wakes up several days later and finds Andy at her bedside, back to normal and reading her favorite manga. Fuko, understandably, is upset at Andy for leaving her in the dark about the plan he and Shen came up with and fears of being left alone again if things didn't go as planned. Andy apologizes for the scare he gave her and for the first time calls her by her name.
I have to admit, this scene is pretty cute, and afterwards the two head to the round table for a meeting about the quest result. Apocalypse said that almost every quest has been complete, with the results being an addition of an 11th seat, the locations of another negator and artifact, the unification of all the world's languages, meaning non-negators can speak English now and always believe they have. And as for Andy, Fuko, and Shen's quest, it's completed as well, with the location of the negator repair being located in Brazil.
Jesus wants a hug!
I've been waiting to do that joke ever since I first saw this panel. Unfortunately, the group was unable to capture the negator unseen, as they were instead kidnapped by a strange man wearing an eye patch who threatens to kill unseen unless they join his group. More on him in a future video. And because of their failure, Apocalypse releases Uma Galaxy as a penalty, who flies through the ceiling and into the sky. Junes summons the Uma from the previous arc to move everyone to where Galaxy is. And at first it doesn't seem so bad, but remember, Umas are the manifestations of rules, so what are a few things that come into mind when it comes to Galaxy? Well, there's multiple star systems and bodies. It's how we came up with the concept of days and weeks, and oh yeah, aliens. Aliens that suddenly appear approaching Earth, saying that they're here to conquer Earth with a full force of an armada. But Junes, taking off her helmet for the first time, shows them the full force of her might, using her negator ability, Unjustice, which negates other people's sense of justice and turns the armada against one another and orders them to leave Earth alone. And this is where the main conflict arrives, as she explains that the Union uncovered a stone tablet with 101 slots long ago, and every time they receive the penalty, a slot gets filled in that tablet. There have been 99 penalties added to the tablet now, and if all of them filled, Ragnarok will occur. And if anyone who is familiar with Norse mythology will tell you that it's considered to be the end of the world. Yeah, so that's why the Union continues to take quests from Apocalypse, because they have two options. They can either not take any quests and have new penalties added every 3 months for their inaction, making Ragnarok come even faster, or do what Junes is planning to do and complete as many quests as she can, gathering allies, artifacts, and take the fight to the one person who is responsible for forcing these rules upon the Earth: God. And that's all the time I have for today. There is more to cover, but I'm not making the same mistake that I did when I made my last review. So subscribe so you don't miss the next part of this review. The next part may come out later this year depending on some things, as there's another video I'm really excited to make that I plan on releasing next month. So until then, thanks for watching everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video and hope you have a decent day, and I'll see you next time. Bye!
Take a deep breath, deep breath, deep breath, deep breath. Let it go, let it out, let it go, let it out. Take a deep breath, deep breath, deep breath.